One, two, three.
Hello, friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from our secret ice fortress and laboratory high in the Swiss Alps. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. Keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground as Sumo and Smokestack direct your attention to a higher dimension. Are you ready? Stand by.
Yeah! Yeah! Hey yo, bros, it's time! It's time, bros. Alright, bros, begin. Straight out the full dungeons and rap. The teddy bear drops deep, it steals my handbag. I never drive, cause to drive is the grandfather of rap. Beyond the walls of the lady's life is defined. I think of people when I'm in a Boston state of mind. Hope the lag got some tag. My drag don't like no dirty bag. Run up the rag and get the flag in my Boston state of mind. What more could you ask for? Rancid teddy bear? You complain about strangers, I gotta love it though. Somebody still speaks for me everywhere. I'm rapping to the fairy and I'm gonna move your dictionary. Word hoes, look at these hoes. Bang, bang, bang. Bang, 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 bang. I'm the real OG. Good morning.
Good morning. That was gangsta.
I'm starting a rap career in honor of Black History Month, which is what we're talking about today.
All right.
Today is a day for Black history. It's for the Black Americans.
Yep.
Who this show is also for. You know, this show is for everybody in America.
True that.
Really. And I'm gonna be Little Biggie Slim's doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Little Bitty Slim's Dr. Big, Mick Soldier.
It's a good rap name.
And yeah, I think so. And so today for we're gonna learn a lot about Black history, the real kind,
Mm-hmm.
not the weird, fake kind that they want to feed Black people so that they act weird.
So this is not a Hotep show.
Well, it's more than Hotep.
All right.
I'm going to the real Hotep.
Sweet.
There's real Hotep. Now the problem with the Hoteps is that they think that the center of this is the problem. No one knows anything about history.
Mm-hmm.
Because American schools are stupid.
That's definitely true.
And it's a bunch of word cells arguing with shape rotators, and they can never come to an agreement. But I'm both a word cell and a shape rotator.
Mm.
And so I can bridge that gap.
Yeah.
And so what I am going to tell people about is the real and actually true ancient empires of ancient Africa, which almost no one's ever heard of before, even though they play a substantial role in the global stage for many reasons.
Sweet.
But yes, I believe you wanted to speak on people who were dying of heart attacks.
Well, I've just been seeing some interesting headlines lately, and I thought maybe we just run through them.
Let's go.
Just sort of as go ahead.
I'm eating a chocolate crepe again.
Excellent.
And I wanted to say thank you to Welder by Trade for realizing his mistake.
Yes, indeed.
Because he has changed his review to 5 stars.
Excellent.
And Suplex was a little disappointed that he didn't stick to his guns more. And say
you can't win. You can't win Welder by Trade.
You can't. Well, no, you can. You can. I think because I tell them I understand your concern, but I think the complete wrongness of his position was made self-evident.
Yeah.
And so there was nothing, when you're that wrong,
Yeah.
it's there's no sticking to your guns. It's like,
Don't be a moral relativist, suplex.
right. So, I mean, he was just that wrong.
Yeah.
Like it was wrong on a level that hasn't been since maybe Tojo attacked Pearl Harbor.
Right. But now, he's so right.
Right. Now he's so right. He's the MAP's viceroy to Israel.
Yep. Congratulations, welder by trade.
Yeah.
You are the MAP's viceroy to Israel.
So you get to all of our international dealings we do with Israel. Like, for instance, currently the show is not listened to very much in Israel.
True.
I can only assume this is because of mass Jewish censorship.
Yes.
And so your job would be to go there, preferably in person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Zoom is okay, I guess. And convince all of the hugely vaccinated Israelis to listen to the show so we can save them from their 7th booster shot.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tough mission, but I think you can do it.
I agree.
Yeah.
You know that rap I sing?
Mm-hmm.
There are these websites online that just randomly generate rap lyrics for you.
No kidding.
And I think, I don't think it was that different than modern rap songs.
That was randomly generated text?
It was randomly generated.
That's hilarious.
And it was not, I don't know that, because, I mean, I'm not a rap person. I don't think rap has ever been good.
Yeah.
But rap was better once upon a time, for sure.
Right. Yeah.
And now what they rap about doesn't even make sense. Like, the words just are gibberish.
Well, what you just performed, I thought was real.
I know. That's the problem. Now, this isn't only a black thing. This is also true of country music.
Yes, true.
Country music is now just random allusions to, like, a pickup truck in a dirt road.
Right.
Without any context.
It's completely void of any meaning.
Right. So that's just a general problem with the direction of the country. It's all word sales. Everywhere you go.
Is this going to be a word sell hate show? Is that?
No, I don't even really know what one is, honestly. All I know is there's word sales to the left of me, word sales to the right.
Yeah.
Here I am, shape rotating with you. Right. I think isn't a word sale someone that only thinks in words?
I think that's it. Yeah.
And then there's shape rotators, which is those of us who can manipulate three-dimensional objects in our mind like normal humans.
Yep.
And I'm not sure if that's real or if we're just having a massive communication about what we're talking about. Like, I can't imagine that other people can't visualize shapes in their heads and spin them around.
Here's the weird thing, is that I can't. We've talked on the show before about aphantasia and the fact that I can't visualize things in my brain, and
right.
I can still, even though I can't see them, can still rotate shapes in my head and think about.
That doesn't make any sense.
Mechanical. I know. About? It's very weird.
This is word cell magic.
The thing is, it's like there's a correlation between being a shape rotator and being just generally mechanically inclined. Like if you can imagine the shapes of gears and all these things, the way a machine works, you can figure it out easily. And it's interesting because I was having a conversation with my wife about this and some friends, and we were all kind of describing our experience, and my wife definitely can visualize things in her mind with incredible clarity to the point where she was having different colored sheep jumping over a fence in a field, and she was describing everything she was seeing with her eyes closed. And we were like, you can see this. She's like, yeah, I can really see this. And I can't do that at all. But then again, her mechanical inclination is very poor. And she would describe herself as a word cell. Whereas I'm definitely a shape rotator. So go figure. I don't know.
See, this is what I mean. I don't think people understand. I think everyone is operating on their own definitions of what shape rotator and word cell mean, and we're all talking It's one of those things. It's like, can my perception of the color blue ever be compared to yours?
Yes, it is a problem.
It's like I don't. It's like an impassable gap, and I think that's what's happening on the internet. Not that like 50% of the public is devoid of a soul and has no ability to rationalize anything, which I think is true. The recent trend of NPCs is the biggest argument in favor of Hinduism and reincarnation that's ever been, because they're like, well, we had too many babies and there weren't enough souls to go around.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, that does make sense. Right? That does make sense, doesn't it? That's why they're all zombies. Interesting point. But yeah, I think there's a lot of that, because I can't. I can see sometimes, like, especially when I am lying in bed, I can see things in my head so clearly that I sometimes wonder if they're really there. Right? Because there's normally a distinction, but sometimes I can see like crystal clear clarity of things. Nothing really important. Just what you might pass in your mind thinking about. And so it's very difficult for me to imagine that other people are not able to also do this. But like, I have trouble imagining that someone's interior life is just pure strings of words.
Yeah. See that?
Like, then I went to the store, and there was the thing, instead of just imagining a vision of yourself walking to the store.
Yeah. Well, it's not even that simple, because in my case,
what would
it's
you
neither.
think about if you didn't have language? Like, what would those people, like, how would they even operate?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they actually operate in just pure language. That's the weird part of it.
But that's what they say. See, I think this is a color thing.
Yeah, maybe.
Because, like, how would it even work?
Well, I think,
like, how would it even?
I think with the visualization thing, I think people have there's been like brain studies done where people are asked to imagine something or read a story, and some people, their visual cortex is lighting up, and other people it isn't.
Yeah, I've seen those studies too, and I don't know how to deal with the word cell problem. I mean, should we have like a law where you go into this study, and if that portion of your brain doesn't light up, we exile you to Siberia or something?
No, man.
Like,
I don't want to go to Siberia.
I think that you could do it though. I think like if you're asked to visualize a scenario and no part of your visual cortex lights up at all,
right? But I'm doing it.
What is the difference between you and a monkey?
Well, the thing is, I'm doing it in a different part of my brain, I assume.
How does that?
Because I can still do it without seeing it. That's the weird part.
No, you can't rotate a shape for that.
I can. Yeah. Yeah.
You just have X, Y, Z coordinates, and they're just running around.
I don't know how to tell you, but I can do it. That's the weird part.
I don't see how that makes sense. But whatever. Let's talk about all the heart attacks that happen. Before we talk about the real We Was Kings, because I'm going to do black people tremendous service today.
Awesome.
And all of us.
Awesome.
Am I the keeper of black culture? Yes. I think that's clear.
Mm-hmm. I've always thought so.
I think that I'm basically, it's not, I mean, people don't know the backstory, but it's not totally unreasonable to say that without me, there would be no Dr. Dre. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I'm qualified to tell black people about their culture. And I have a better culture for them than anything on offer in the mainstream. So they should listen.
Sweet.
It doesn't involve rap at all.
I'm looking forward to this.
Or hoes or shooting people.
Yeah.
Or going to prison.
Yeah. That culture was invented by the FBI.
It was invented by the FBI. And if you listen to like mainstream culture about what black people do, then they just sound like that. What in the black people's mind, they're just like, yeah, well, prison's fine. Just whatever, who cares? Bang bang.
Thug life is a psyop.
Thug life, yeah, it's all a psyop. It's that they want black people. This is where the Hoteps and the black people are correct in that the culture does want to keep black people down, but they just are incorrect in that it wants to keep everybody down.
Yeah,
it's not targeted at them specifically. It's just that, unfortunately, because the real history of Africa, no one knows except for me. And so they have been deprived of any of that and just given thug life. And so we're going to cure that today.
Great.
Or cure that forever. But first, let's talk about all the people, all the word cells dying of heart attacks, because I can't imagine this is happening in the shape rotator.
I think all are susceptible. Well, I want people to, as they're perusing the news, take note of a trend. And so I'm just going to read a few headlines. Estimated 300,000 people in the UK have a potentially fatal heart valve disease. And that is about stenosis. Here's one. The common winter chore that can trigger a heart attack. Warning you, don't shovel your driveway because you can blow out your heart suddenly and die. Hidden risk.
Which on the surface, both are true normally.
Right.
Like a fat gentleman who's a little older, who doesn't do a lot of exercise, getting out there and suddenly doing strenuous activity like shoveling snow could trigger a heart attack.
Yes, it could. But I'm highlighting a reportage trend here.
Yes, I've got. It's just
Next one. This is the Sun. Hidden risk. Urgent warning as 300,000 Brits living with a stealth disease that could kill within 5 years. Interesting. Over 250,000 Brits could face a new heart-related illness due to the stress of the COVID pandemic. Experts have warned. Stress. Stress.
That one's the most suspicious to me, because of the stress of the COVID pandemic does not cause heart attacks.
Not just old folks. Sudden heart problems can kill younger adults making love too. So don't have sex because your heart might explode. Okay?
Right.
And then finally, what is the reason for the increased number of heart attacks in young people? ?
How much is it increased, though?
Well, it depends who you ask. But there are numerous reports and studies highlighting that, in fact, young people are developing heart problems faster, and so, or at a higher rate than they were. And so lots of stories are coming out to explain this. Now, you guys already obviously know that I think that the vaccine is related to this.
Right.
But when you bring this up, and this will be just a quick little explanation, when this is brought up, people will say, well, COVID can cause heart problems. Why are you blaming?
I say every time, no matter who I'm around, be they like a blacksmith or a brain surgeon, I say, COVID does not exist. And then then they blow up, and we have a small fight for like 10 minutes until they throw up their hands and leave.
Well, that's one way to handle it.
Right, which is it's the correct way.
Well, I think COVID does exist technically as a disease. So I just think that this is all. So for the sake of argument, you're going to have to go along with me for a minute. Mm-hmm. Okay. So when you bring up the possibility that the vaccines might be causing heart problems, people often respond, well, COVID can cause heart problems too. Why are you blaming the vaccine? Why won't you take COVID seriously? And so if you read those articles and many others, what they're pointing towards is an autoimmune reaction where the immune system attacks the heart muscle. And there's other autoimmune problems associated with the vaccine, but I just want to focus on this and why it's more likely that the mRNA vaccines are causing autoimmune issues with the heart and with other systems. And why it's more likely that that's the cause and not the virus itself. So how does a virus work? And again, you're going to have to just suspend disbelief for a moment, Sumo.
Sure.
Tiny particle enters, a virus particle attaches to and enters the cell, injecting its genetic payload. The cell makes copies of that tiny virus mechanism until it eventually, the cell dies and lyses and all the new little viruses come out. And the process repeats. So you have a virus particle sort of killing cells one at a time, right? Then your immune response to that, the body detects some damage being done. The immune system kicks in. Immune system cells flood the area. They detect the virus particles. You develop a response, antibodies, and so forth, and the whole system kicks in, starts attacking the virus particles, carrying them off and having them excreted by the liver and whatnot, so that they cannot continue the cycle. Now, on the other hand, the mRNA vaccine, it's giving you a payload of messenger RNA suspended in little lipid droplets that can be absorbed by cells. So in this case, instead of a virus particle picking up, it's just a little tiny droplet of fat, basically, with RNA in it. And certain cells pick these up and absorb them, and then decode and execute that RNA, and then your own cells start expressing, and the code is for the spike protein, and your own cells start expressing the spike protein on its membrane. So these spike proteins are bioactive protein. That means that cell is going to start doing damage to the cells around it because it's going to come in contact with them, and that's going to cause inflammation and immune response. So this is your own cell now, which is acting as a hostile agent in the surrounding tissue or whatever, because it's now expressing these bioactive proteins on its membrane. So when your immune system shows up to this, it's not a virus particle that it's encountering. It's encountering one of your own cells acting as a bad actor in this scene and causing damage to cells around it. So then your immune system reacts to that presence, that cell that's doing damage, and what's it finding? It's finding the spike protein, yes, because that's expressed on the membrane of the cell, but it's also finding whatever cell that is doing it. So say that's your heart, a cell in your heart. So your immune system then potentially is not only developing a response to the spike protein itself, but it's developing a response to the cardiac muscle cell or whatever. Pick your location. And so then you develop an autoimmune response to not only the spike protein, which then supposedly gives you immunity to COVID because it's the same protein, more or less. But then you potentially have an issue where you're training your immune system to attack your own tissues because it's your own tissues that are expressing this spike protein. Have I made that clear?
Yes.
And so
I think so.
These are two different things.
Not the people that can't rotate shapes. Right. They're still trying to.
Right. Yeah, they're totally
They can't imagine anything that you said. There's just a stream of language going through their head. And it doesn't make any, but yes.
And so when people try to equate the risk of autoimmune dysfunction of getting COVID and getting the vaccine, those are two different processes happening in the body, and the immune system is encountering two very different things. And it would make sense that we would be seeing a lot of crazy autoimmune responses, which in fact we are. That story is now being told, and I could go through articles about that, but they're easy to find. SciTech Daily did one, Pfizer COVID vaccine associated with increased risk of carditis. So that's an autoimmune response against the heart. Now, some people do have heart problems when they have COVID, no doubt.
Well, I doubt, but yes.
I know you doubt.
I doubt.
But those problems are probably going to be more likely to be linked to something like increases in blood viscosity and clotting, or just viral damage itself, direct damage by the virus itself if they had a really high viral titer during their infection. But it's not necessarily, there's nothing there happening that is necessarily going to result, or even that's more likely to result in an autoimmune dysfunction, whereas the mRNA vaccines, just by the way they operate, you can logic this out. Anybody can logic this out and see that could provoke an autoimmune response. So be aware of that and watch the headlines, because they're trying to spin this thing so hard that they're trying to give you any reason to think about. They're trying to reframe the phenomena of increased heart attacks in young people any way they can. So just be aware of it. End of segment.
Well, yeah, that's how they did with AIDS too. When they gave people AZT and they all started dropping dead,
Yes.
they said it was AIDS, but AIDS isn't real.
Right. I mean, really,
but,
really,
do you
it
think-
is. That's a. Let's not just skip over that because is a perfect analogy for this. All those people died. They died because of the AZT. I mean, some people do
Right.
die of AIDS, but it's not. I mean, they don't. It didn't manifest itself because of a viral infection. I don't think, and I don't think you do either. But the point is, during this huge AIDS crisis, with these high body counts and all these guys conking out, a lot of them were killed because of the treatments they were given, and that can't be passed over. The swine flu vaccine in the 70s that was called from the market during the swine flu pandemic of the 70s. A vaccine was rushed to market. It was deployed. A whole bunch of people got Guillain-Barré syndrome, and then they stopped. They withdrew it from the market, and you could that paper's still out there. You can read it, the definitive study on what happened, and how many people were injured or killed by that vaccine. Like, this has happened a bunch of times, and so nobody should be acting shocked that it's happening again. You know?
Yeah, they shouldn't. I think. Do you think? Do you think word cells enjoy the idea of viruses because it's all two-dimensional, like that happens in a petri dish?
I imagine a virus is a three-dimensional object.
Well, yeah, but I don't think. But like, you can just. But you don't have. But there are no three-dimensional pictures of them. Right. So you just.
Yeah. No, there's not.
So you can just pretend it's all 2D.
So you're thinking viruses are a word cell conspiracy?
Well, I have trouble when people attribute every symptom under the sun to a thing.
Oh, I agree. It's massively abused as a concept or a causative
because
theory.
the other day there was this lady at the store and she was complaining that because people for some reason like to speak openly about their medical problems. Yeah. I don't like that. Like, I've heard people they'll just be talking to you like, well, I have a colonoscopy coming up. And I'll be like, why, instead of saying that, why would you just light yourself on fire? Yeah. Like, what is your problem for why would you tell a stranger that? Like, you might tell someone that you actually know that you were having a colonoscopy. But people are very open about it. But anyway, there was this lady at the store and she was like, well, I had COVID and it manifested. She used the word it manifested as GI problems.
Yeah, well, anything can be COVID now. I mean, like, literally everything is COVID.
That doesn't, and so that means that nothing is COVID. It's not. It's just so stupid. It's at the beginning, this was a respiratory disease, and then everyone just dropped that. Remember?
Oh yeah.
How it would make your lungs fill up and you couldn't breathe. And now it's like, oh, well, you get a heart attack and the GI and it makes you fever, but you don't necessarily have breathing problems. It's like, what are you talking? What is? None of this makes any sense.
Oh well, a lot of this thing has changed completely, without
all
notice.
Of it, all the time.
For a good example of that would be putting patients on ventilators for the first year and a half of this thing. If your oxygen level got below like a 90. Your blood oxygen saturation, they'd want to put you on a vent. And
they did, and then you
die because you get pneumonia because a ventilator puts you at high risk for catching pneumonia, and you're in a nasty hospital filled with superbugs that you wouldn't encounter in real life. But now they're not doing that. They've changed.
The flu is not abnormal.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like people started measuring their blood oxygen levels with no frame of reference for how low they would go when they just get any other virus.
Yeah, exactly. It was all of this was stupid. All of the medical community should be ashamed that they are not. Yeah. Because they're all, I assume they cannot rotate shapes.
Well, and the thing is, I know people that got sick with COVID to the point where their blood oxygen saturations were down in the low 80s or the low 70s in some cases.
Yeah.
And they didn't go to the hospital. They had to get antibiotics and stuff. Like, they did get medical care, but they didn't have to be put on a ventilator. I mean, we're talking very
you need to be
low.
put on a ventilator very seldom.
If you have a collapsed lung, or you have like the purpose of the ventilator is to replace the function of your chest muscles opening or inflating and deflating your lungs. People with COVID don't have any problem with their chest muscles. They go up and down just fine. They can sit there and breathe. They just have to breathe a lot. What they can use is an nasal oxygen or an ECMO oxygen machine to oxygenate their blood for them because they have lung damage in some cases. That's useful. But the idea that any of these people would ever be put on a ventilator when they can breathe under their own power was retarded from day one. And it stayed retarded as all those people died of pneumonia needlessly.
Yeah, and all the doctors were too stupid to realize it, and also too cowardly. Too cowardly. So there was a great post on 4chan the other day, because that's where all truth comes from. It really increasingly is, because it's one of the last places where people can speak freely. And they brought up this. Well, I'll just read the post for you. I don't know that I agree with the premise of who does this, but there's people that do this. So, quote, people who can't defend themselves physically, parentheses, women and low T men, parse information through a consensus filter as a safety mechanism. They literally do not ask, is this true? They ask, will others be okay with me thinking this is true? This makes them very malleable to brute force manufactured consensus. If every screen they look at says the same thing, they will adopt that position because their brain interprets it as everyone in the tribe believing it. Only high T males and aneurotypical people, autists, are actually free to parse information with an objective "is this true?" filter. There's some truth to that. I don't agree that it's entirely women and low T men that do this.
Yeah.
Or that only high T men, quote unquote, do the opposite. But there's definitely a large portion of the public that is this true never comes in their mind. It's just, which again, I can only imagine is related to not being able to rotate shapes or something.
Well, it must not have come into the minds of a lot of doctors that were putting people on vents with their oxygen levels in the 80s. Because you have a duty to ask, is this true? Just because the hospital administrator wrote a policy that says do this, it doesn't mean you just do it. I mean, supposedly the doctors are supposed to be the smart ones. They're supposed to be the guys that have all the training, that are making these hard life and death decisions. They went to medical school. They've got big letters after their names. They're the ones that are supposed to question this stuff. And they didn't. They did whatever the administrator policy told them to do. And it was stupid. It was a terrible policy, and they should have known, and they should have asked the questions. But they're a bunch of freaking cowards.
Well, yeah, because if they don't do whatever the policy says, or whatever the CDC says, they get their license revoked. Right. Which is why none of your expertise matters. It's like, well, I went to school first. It's like, okay.
Who cares?
But if you don't do what the paper says, are you free to do what the paper doesn't say? Yeah. And they're like, no. Well, it's like, then it's not you making the medical decisions.
Right. A trained monkey can follow a flow chart. I don't want some flow chart following coward making the decisions when I'm in a life or death situation. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. And they don't, I mean, they just, like I've said before, the thing where they're like, don't confuse your Google search with my medical degree. Yeah. And I'm like, I've been in the office when you just look stuff up on a computer yourself.
Don't confuse your corporate don't confuse your corporate flowchart with my Google search, you giant coward. That's my response to that sentiment. Because a bunch of people, and now they've changed the policies about ventilators. Has there been an apology? Has there been any punishment for the people that put these policies into place? Has anybody gone back and asked what happened? Not at all. It was done without a single report or any fanfare.
So, like, the whole hospital freak out when they're like, everyone's on ventilators and they come in and it's a nightmare. It's just like, but you're doing that. It doesn't need to just stop.
Remember when Trump ordered like or asked GE or no, I don't know, General Motors or something to like build ventilators in one of their car factories, and they were just like cranking out truckloads of ventilators. It's crazy. None of that was ever necessary. Because most people, even if their oxygen is really low, ventilator isn't going to fix the problem.
I don't trust everyone in America is retarded.
Sadly, I think you're right.
And it's so bad. I don't know what we're going to talk like because I was realizing the other day this show has coincided almost entirely with the existence of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
we actually don't. So I don't feel like we talk about it that much.
I don't feel like we have either, but I do feel like we've left behind a good record for future archaeologists to parse like the insanity of the times.
Yes.
But yeah, a lot of people just cannot, the idea is this true never comes into their head. Mm-hmm. That's also why they get mad at you for having a different opinion. Because they're like, well, the tribe will be mad at us if we think
right.
this.
Yeah, this idea, like, this thing you're considering is socially unacceptable for me, and so I'm going to attack you for considering it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's so much of what, like, people that think, is this true, have a very difficult time understanding that. I think the line is drawn between shape rotators and word cells again. I think it's the same line.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I mean, I just can't imagine these people who are like, I think of it, like, you're not even making sense. Like, I shape rotate with words.
But I'm not using words either, though. That's the thing. It's some other function. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it.
I'm
doing it right now.
Audio reflections.
I'm doing it right now. I'm rotating a cog in my brain, but I don't see it, and I'm not using words. So I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
It doesn't make any sense. Well, okay, so before we talk about the real Black history.
Okay.
The real Black history. Not the fake Black history.
Sweet.
One of our listeners said that we've been showing up on the NPC forums. Hello.
What are the NPC forums? I don't know what that is. It sounds fun.
Well, I'm sort of like of two minds about it. One, I like them, and two, I'm like, oh goodness.
Yeah.
Because it's the Monterey Peninsula College forum.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with any college or the Monterey Peninsula.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a clever name they have to disguise the fact that it's basically the most insane French people on the internet who are all quasi-genocidal. Now, that doesn't mean I don't like them. They're nice people, except for the whole genocide thing.
No.
I think it was started by Weave.
Oh,
and
okay.
You know, Weave was he was arrested.
Yeah.
Now I grant you, Weave, that he was. I grant Weave that he was in his arrest and imprisonment was unjust, because all he really did was hack AT&T.
Yeah. Which is really an objective good.
Right. He was sort of just showing people a flaw in the AT&T security. You know.
Yeah, he's a white hat.
I mean, he really didn't even do that much bad, honestly. I mean,
he embarrassed the wrong people. That's what he did.
He embarrassed the wrong people, did a little bit of identity fraud.
Yeah, but, you know.
Just a little bit, right? Maybe.
Just a taste.
Allegedly. And he got 41 months in prison, but he only served 13 months. But since then, he became even more of an intense individual.
Mm-hmm.
And
prison will do that.
Well, yeah, he sort of is what the media thinks everyone that voted for Trump is.
Okay.
Right. Like, he was the webmaster for the Daily Stormer.
Oh, no.
I think. He was, I once heard him talk about making drones that could target people by skin color.
Oh, no.
And all this sort of thing.
No.
But I don't know. I don't even know if he's racist, though, because every time I've seen him online, he's in Thailand trying to get with Taiwanese girls. So can you really be racist in that way?
I think maybe you can.
You know, I mean, just because he's in Thailand hiding from the law.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I think maybe it was. I'm not sure. It's just what I've heard, that NPC was started by, or was Weave was influential in the Monterey Peninsula College Forum.
Okay.
Yeah, I may be wrong. I do know that he frequents there, or at least looks at it sometimes. So Weave, if you're listening, hello. We share a mutual friend that we both know. He's a bald guy, big into jiu-jitsu, which that doesn't say anything because that's everyone in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna give away too much, but I'm 1 degree of separation from a close contact with Weave.
Oh, that's nice.
I don't know what that says about me, but
I think it says you're sketch.
I guess so. Not really, though. It's just that I've known people on the fringes of society for a long time, on all sides. The fringes on all sides, and so occasionally one of the two of those fringes like goes and blows up a building or something. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. All Weave did was hack. He doesn't like black people, and he hacked AT&T. What do you want me to do? I didn't do it, and I'm here to cure his dislike of black people because I'm going to tell him about real black people.
Sweet. We're just going to heal the world today.
Heal the world today, but the Monterey Peninsula College Forum, it's actually a closed forum because they don't want like journalists writing about what they say.
Yep.
So, but they do have interesting content there. Like there's very interesting discussions that go on. Some are not at all. In fact, most of them are not at all racial in any way or anything. They're just other people there. But you can go if you go to npcforum.org. You can sign up. I think they're a little persnickety on who can come. You need $20 though, and you need $20, a non-disposable, non-Russian email account to get in. That's what it says on the thing. Now it is disguised as an actual. It's like vaguely disguised as an actual college thing.
That's funny.
Like the top of it says, "Email faster, study harder, type better." Monterey is a for-profit learning institution dedicated to learning and profit. Here your journey into 5-figure tuition debt begins. And
I like these guys. That's great.
They're funny. Yeah, like Weave's a funny guy.
Yeah.
He's just robotically genocidal. And I think some of that is even just a character acting.
Yeah.
I think he just likes to really troll people online and make people freak out. I don't even think he really is that. So anyway,
well, it is funny because people can learn if you just push this particular button. You can watch somebody have a complete meltdown, and there's a temptation there to just do it all the time, and you end up becoming a monster because you're having fun. Yeah.
I think that's all that's happened with Weave. Is he was just. I do remember that for a while, all payment processors, credit cards, and banks would not work with him. And so he was in Thailand because that was one of the few places he could buy things with Bitcoin or something.
Right.
To live on. So I think he was using something else. No, of course he was into Monero. Because it was completely untraceable. So, but I felt I did feel like that being banned from every single aspect of the financial world for hacking somebody was a little much.
Yeah.
But so anyway, hello Monterey Peninsula College residents. You're welcome here. Please don't blow up anything.
Yeah, be good, guys. Come on.
Yeah. Okay. So, let me ask you this. Let me ask you a question, listener. You too. What is the oldest extant, meaning still existing, Christian empire?
Ethiopian.
Correct. Ethiopian. Would you have said that if I hadn't had Black History Month opener?
Probably not.
Right. A lot of people don't know that. But it is not only the oldest still existing, it is the first. Before the Roman Empire.
Mm-hmm.
By a good measure. In fact, we have from 330 AD, we have coins, inscriptions, and stuff of them being full-blown Trinitarian. They have the first coins with a cross on it come out of Ethiopia.
Wow.
Right. Not out of anywhere in Europe, not out of the Middle East. All of them from Ethiopia. And there's inscriptions on some of these things about the Trinity. There are inscriptions on stone they find there where the one Ethiopian king in about the same time period references Jesus and the Trinity 11 times in the span of like 2 sentences.
And this is from the 300s?
Yeah, the 300s.
Wow.
And so here's the interesting thing. It had to, an empire doesn't spring up overnight, right? It has to grow. And so it must have, logic tells us that it had to start before then. But that's the first record we have of it, is this explosion of coins and inscriptions from the 330s. That's really everywhere. But we don't have anything before that. But so logic tells us that it must have been growing there for a while before it was a full-blown cultural, political statement.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have anything before that. And if you ask the Ethiopian scholars today, which is one of the reasons they're great, why that is, they will tell you it is a conspiracy theory put on them by the Egyptians to obfuscate they are we was kings.
Mm-hmm.
To obfuscate the Christian roots of Ethiopia and make it seem like the Coptics in Egypt are the main Christian center of Egypt.
Ah.
But what the Ethiopians will tell you is that actually Bacchus, the Ethiopian eunuch who was in Acts,
mm-hmm.
right? He's riding in his chariot, he's reading Isaiah, and one of the apostles sees him and says, "Do you know what you're reading?" And he says, "How can I unless someone explains it to me?" He comes and explains that it's really about Jesus, about Christ,
mm-hmm.
and the Ethiopian eunuch, who the Ethiopians call Bacchus, is his name, was baptized right then. He goes back to Ethiopia, according to their legends, and basically converts the whole country.
Awesome.
In the span of a few decades. Now, why were they so? Here's 2 questions. Why were they so amenable to this new religion? And why is an Ethiopian in Jerusalem reading Isaiah?
Yeah.
Well, that's because for 1,000 years before Bacchus, Ethiopia was Jewish.
Really?
It was completely Jewish. In fact, even today, there's a large Jewish minority there.
Are they Black African Jews, or are they like racially Jewish Jews in Ethiopia?
Both.
Okay.
They are, and I mean they're the same people.
Okay.
So all the Jews in Ethiopia are black.
Mm-hmm.
However, they've maintained for a very long time, for 3,000 years, that they are actually also like Hebraic Jews.
Okay. So they're claiming a Abrahamic lineage.
Correct.
Okay.
In fact, this is why Ethiopia has so much. Ethiopia is a puzzle piece that you need, because they claim a lot of stuff, and some of it's undoubtedly true. Some of it's a little like, maybe, and some of it's like, that's pretty out there. But they do have a lot of it does make a lot of puzzle pieces fit together. In fact, so like there's holy languages, right? So like the Catholic Church, their holy language is Latin.
Mm-hmm.
The Eastern Orthodox is Greek. Like they do all their theology in Greek and stuff. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church has a language called Ge'ez. And they claim that Ge'ez is actually the ancestor language of Hebrew, from which Hebrew comes.
Whoa.
And Ge'ez is, strangely, a Semitic language in the middle of Africa.
Wild.
It has the same, like, it's obviously of the Semitic family.
Okay.
Right? And so there is this strong Jewish connection. And not only that, they are first temple Jews. So they were doing things, in fact, until extremely recently, like within the past 100 years. There are ancient temples in Ethiopia, all over, ancient Jewish temples, with like ancient, all the standard Jewish flair, with sacrificial animal sites. And they're doing everything according to the Levitical rules.
Whoa.
All over the country. In fact, even today, Ethiopian Christians follow the Leviticus dietary laws. Like the Ethiopian Orthodox.
Wow.
They've done, so according to them, they were Jewish for 1,000 years before the Ethiopian, then that's why he was there.
I always wondered, like, why was this dude reading Isaiah in the first place?
Right, because he was there to celebrate, and they were hugely Jewish.
Okay, so he was on a Jewish religious pilgrimage and reading Isaiah because Ethiopia was Jewish. Wow. Okay, cool. Very cool.
Now, a lot of people think it, and this is the idea people get this because, again, no one, the schools don't teach anything. People think that Judaism was this small thing just sort of in Israel at the time of the Roman Empire.
Uh-huh.
Actually, about the time of Jesus, Jews made up about 10% of the Roman Empire.
Whoa.
People who were religiously Jewish, which is huge. That's a big influence, right, on the... Does that include, like, Sumerians and stuff? Yeah, and people in India. I mean, there were Jews in India. The Jewish religion spread like religions do. And it was sort of a little bit everywhere. Well, not a little bit. I mean, like I said, 10% were Jews. But Ethiopia was this huge hotspot of Jewishness and had been for a long time. Now, how did they become Jewish according to because modern scholars have no answer for this. Okay. They don't. If you don't believe the Ethiopian story, you really have no other story to go with because it doesn't make sense how they all became Jewish in the middle of Africa. Because what appears to have happened is they were all Jewish, and then unlike Jews elsewhere, when the Ethiopian eunuch Bacchus came back, they were all like, yep, this is true, let's all convert today. And they sort of all did. So they had all the they had all the hardware installed already to see that Christ met and they were like, oh, yeah, Messiah came. Yeah. Good. Okay. Now on to the next thing. So how did that happen? Well, do you remember in the Bible when it talks about the Queen of Sheba going to Solomon? Yes. Well, Sheba is an area down in Ethiopia, right? Oh, okay. Well, she goes to visit Solomon, and according to Ethiopian tradition, they have a really good visit. So much so that Solomon impregnates her. Oh. Which is not unthinkable for Solomon. Yeah, he got around. Since he had like 1,000 wives and 10,000 concubines, right? And that the Queen of Sheba returned to Ethiopia with a son of a prince son of Solomon. Okay. Right? And then when he came of age, he got to be a man. He went back to Israel to see his father. Spent 3 or 4 years there with Solomon, getting to know him, and he learned his religion. And then he said, I want to take the religion of Yahweh back to my people. And Solomon then gave him a retinue of priests and archpriests and sent him on a boat back down the Red Sea to Ethiopia, and he basically converted the whole country to Judaism. Cool. Which is, so that's how they say, and then so even today, right? So every single king of Ethiopia, of which there are many, because there's lots of little kings, and there's like an emperor that's the king of the kings and stuff. In the Ethiopian constitution, like they'll be like, and Emperor whatever is the 221st son of King Solomon. Whoa! So it's a blood lineage that they claim has been maintained since then. The rulers of Ethiopia, even today, claim as the divine right to rule the fact that they believe that they are descended from Solomon.
Rad.
And the Queen of Sheba. Mm-hmm. Now, there is actually genetic evidence for this in that the haplogroup of the Y chromosome that the Jews have, the Ethiopians also have.
Oh.
In large numbers. So this is likely a true story of what happened with the Queen of Sheba. And that's why they were Jewish, First Temple Jews, for like they didn't come here after the Second Temple thing.
Right.
It was obviously there beforehand. And so they are Jewish for a long way back. In fact, every Ethiopian church today has a menorah in the back to do this. And they as an allusion to that. Mm-hmm. And here's how far back do you think they claim that they are? Very far back indeed. In fact, their suspicion is that, well, so the Ethiopians have a huge monastic tradition.
Okay.
There's a lot of monasteries in Ethiopia. They say 1,000. That's just a number for like a lot. But there is a lot. Like there's one on like every corner.
Yeah.
And Ethiopia is about twice the size of Texas, just to give you an idea. And so they're there, and they will tell you that every single monastery there claims a lineage back to Melchizedek.
Whoa.
Right. Who is if you don't know, he's in the Bible, is this weird character that shows up one time. No one knows who he is. Abraham gives him a gift of bread and wine, and then he goes away. And then there's some interesting statements made about him by Paul in the New Testament where he was comparing him to Jesus, and he's like a priest after the order of Melchizedek.
Yeah.
And the Ethiopians say that Melchizedek was an Ethiopian who had like this prophetic school of monasticism that he was keeping and running from Enoch, right? Of the book of Enoch.
Okay, so this is going all the way back.
All the way back.
Yeah.
Right? In fact, if you ask Ethiopians about their history, they will start with Adam. And they'll be like, well, Adam was Ethiopian. And on they go, right? So, because it's basically anyone in the Bible who's not explicitly mentioned otherwise,
okay,
they pretty much claim. Some of them they're probably correct about. I don't know about all of them, but some of them they're probably correct about. So and now they have one interesting. So in the 1700s, there was a British explorer who went to Ethiopia, and up until then, the Book of Enoch was like this in the West. Was like this sort of fantastical book that we had scraps of.
Okay.
But no one really knew anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
When he gets to Ethiopia, he finds that the Ethiopian church, which they didn't even really knew about, is this thriving thing, which is still there today, uses, as in their Bible, has the Book of Enoch. And there it was, completely intact.
Wow.
This whole time. And he was like, wow, there's the whole thing.
The Western world just had fragments of this up until that point?
Just had fragments until the 1700s.
And then the Ethiopians say they had it the whole time.
Oh, yeah. And all the fragments fit into the, it was confirmed, wow, here's the whole thing. And they're like, yeah, well, we've had it the whole time. And it's a strange thing because it's been isolated from the whole world, but at the same time, has these incursions into history over and over again. No one, Ethiopia has always been this faraway place, even today, really, where this people are different, and but yet they keep showing up again. They have all these at the time of Rome, a lot of people don't know this, but Ethiopia had an empire in Africa that was, half the size of the Roman one.
Wow.
Pretty large.
Yeah.
Right? And yet, In fact, Constantine, or maybe not Constantine, one of the later ones, he sent a letter, or maybe it was Constantine, I don't remember. Anyway, he asked the Ethiopians to come help him in a war as a fellow Christian empire.
No kidding.
But the Ethiopians did not do it
Mm-hmm.
because they sent a letter back saying, no, because you're guilty of the Arian heresy.
Based.
This is which is the Arian heresy was this belief that Jesus was not fully God, but he was like this. Yeah, basically what the Muslims think now, like he was this high prophet, right, but not fully God. And so the Arian heresy was going around the Western world at the time, and a lot of people in Rome believed it. And when they asked for help, the Ethiopians said, "We cannot help you as fellow Christians, free or not, until you renounce your heresy."
Awesome.
And so they did not do it. Now, but see, at the same time, via wild machinations that one may describe as divine intervention, Ethiopia has been kept isolated from like the whole world in many ways. Like they're not part of the Eastern Orthodox Church.
Mm-hmm.
They are an Oriental Orthodox Church, and if it's to outsiders, it's like the distinction is strange. But so what happened was at the Council of Nicaea, there was a forged document. This is actually true. There's a conspiracy going all the way back. Who knows who made it? But it was passed to the Ethiopians that said that they would be represented by the Bishop of Alexandria from Egypt.
Okay.
And that wasn't real. No one intended for that to happen, but the Ethiopians believed it. And so they didn't send a representative. And so they were not represented by anybody for like 1,000 years. More than that. In fact, the Ethiopians did not get their own patriarch until the 1950s, which is a long time.
Yeah.
The Alexandria. So all of the like council stuff that was going on didn't even really get back to Ethiopia ever.
Wow.
Like they never. All of the stuff like they knew about some of the heresies and whatnot, but like all of the like council meetings and whatever, everyone sort of thought that they were being communicated down there, but it never really was checked.
Mm-hmm.
And the people in Ethiopia thought they were, but it was never like really communicated. So they were just not included in a lot of stuff and sort of separated from the rest of the Orthodox Church by not really for any reason other than just they drifted apart from a bureaucratic breakdown.
Wow.
Like there was never. Now they will say that they are guilty of the monophysite heresy,
Mm-hmm.
which is I don't even know how to physite heresy, which is basically a thing about the nature of Christ and Christology. It's
Okay.
not worth going into here. But the Ethiopians will tell you, no, that's not true. We actually do believe the same things that the Orthodox Church does about Jesus. The problem is, we were not there at the councils when you guys redefined what the term nature was. And so when we talk about the nature of Christ in our documents, we're referring to the one before the councils changed it because we were never there.
It's funny that though they've been separated for many years and off on their own, they're all still theologians because all theologians just argue about the definitions of words all day.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because you can never get away from that.
That's all they do.
And it's just impossible. So the Ethiopians they sort of separated just by bureaucratic breakdown more than any like actual, like the Eastern Church and the Western Church separated over the filioque and papal supremacy and all that.
Yeah.
But there's no real like defining reason why the Ethiopians split off. They just communication was lost for really no reason other than some dumb person started to forge the document.
Mm-hmm.
And then no one checked because, as we saw in the NFT show in AIDS, no one ever checks anything.
Yeah.
It's the same problem forever. They just, and so when you go there, it's very, like I said, it's close to the Eastern Orthodox Church in a lot of ways, but it's also has like a lot of extreme differences. Like, for example, another big one, probably the biggest thing with the Eastern Orthodox Church is that they claim today to hold the Ark of the Covenant.
That is so cool.
Right. It's in this church in I think it's called St. Mary's. Yeah, I forget the name of it exactly. In Aksum at the Church of St. Mary of Zion.
Okay.
And inside this, it's guarded by monks, some of whom at times have been forced to be blind.
Whoa.
I don't think they ever blinded them, but they recruited blind people.
Gotcha.
Because like so there are like two layers of monks. This is probably where the Elder Scrolls game got their idea of the blind monks which guard the Elder Scrolls.
Mm-hmm.
Probably this is where it comes from. So that they would not lay eyes on the Ark. Right. And so there's like an outer layer of monks who can see, and they hold off visitors, and they guard the compound. And they are allegedly trained to kill.
Okay.
Anyone that approaches, the Ark or gets within a vicinity. But it's all gated off. And then inside there are the second layer of monks, some of which historically have been blind, although not always, who actually go and they keep a constant 24/7 vigil of prayer and incense around the Ark of the Covenant, which is allegedly in the bowels of this church. Now, it's been moved a couple of times in their history. And so what happened was, if in the Bible, where the Ark of the Covenant went to is sort of never explained.
Yeah.
It's just, they have it, then they're attacked by foreigners, the thing is ransacked, and then it disappears from the story, and no one knows where it went to. And they said, well, actually, one of our Ethiopian Jews was there at the time, because, we kept constant going back and forth to Israel after we converted.
Mm-hmm.
And he made off with the Ark to protect it and brought it back here, where we've kept it ever since. And so no one is able to verify this because no one's allowed to go and see it. So there's no like proof that we can give you. It's just that this is really the central point in some ways of the entire Ethiopian Orthodox religion, is this idea that they have the Ark. They all believe that they have the Ark. They may really have it, but it's sort of, in fact, so like when they consecrate the host for the Eucharistic meal during their liturgy, all of them do so on a replica of that Ark of the Covenant.
Whoa.
Like they all have their own replica Ark of the Covenant based on the one that they allegedly have. And they all have their tabos, which is their tablets, which is a replica of the tablets given to Moses, which they claim are still in that box that they still have. And then those tabos are how they consecrate wherever church they have.
So do they claim that the presence of God is over the Ark now as it was in the Old Testament, or do they say
not 100% clear? It is clear that they believe it has power. Okay. And they attribute the fact that they have it to the fact that they are the only country in Africa that has never been conquered, which is true. They're the only country in Africa that was never colonized. Okay. The only one. Well, and they attribute this, in no small measure, to the fact that they possess the Ark of the Covenant and are divinely protected.
Well, it's really interesting because, I think most Christians assume that the Ark is lost or destroyed or something, lost to the sands of time. Right. But if it still existed, because it was such a holy and powerful thing in the Old Testament, like what does God have to do with the Ark of the Covenant now since Christ and everything that's transpired since. Like, what's the meaning of that object now if it exists somewhere? And that's sort of an open question that most of Christianity hasn't really had to deal with because nobody knows where it is.
Right. And so, but the Ethiopians say that it does have power, and that it's very fascinating. So, like, Ethiopia is extremely Christian in a way that would be very hard to communicate if you're not familiar with it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you go to Ethiopia, every taxi driver has, like, icons in the cab.
Yeah.
They're all wearing a cross.
Mm-hmm.
Men that are associated with the church wear their deacon robes outside.
Mm-hmm.
Just going about their daily life. It is on feast days, they bring out the tablets, and they parade them down the street, and all the women go, oh, they do that African wailing thing.
They bring out the original. They bring out the originals or the replicas.
No, the replicas.
Okay.
The originals are kept inside the thing in the Ark of the Covenant.
Okay.
Like, it's hard to describe how, like, openly Christian, like, how much this plays a role in just everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
More so than even, like, the most Muslim town is Muslim. Like, it's just everywhere. Like, all over now also in Ethiopia is a sizable Muslim minority,
Mm-hmm.
and has been basically forever since there was Islam. In fact, I think it's like 35% right now. So Ethiopia is about 45% Ethiopian Orthodox, about 35% Muslim, and then the rest is pretty much Protestant, and then that small smattering of people that are still Jews, and then there's like a handful of Catholics. So it's mostly Ethiopian Orthodox, Muslims, and then Protestants.
Do the Ethiopian Orthodox and the Muslims have a peaceful coexistence, or do they fight a lot?
Both. So they've learned to live together, but they've had frequent back and forth.
Okay.
Over the past 1,000 years. In fact, the Ethiopians are very nice people, extremely nice people. And some would call them even meek people.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you talk to Ethiopians there or here, they're always like, oh, yes, they try to please everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But they can be extremely warlike when necessary.
Okay.
In fact, that's one of the reasons they've never been conquered. And part of the story I'm going to tell you today is the story of how they drove, because the Italians tried to colonize them,
Mm-hmm.
and the Ethiopians said, no way. And they employed their millennia-old tactic of castrating their captors. or not their captors, their captives.
Yeah.
Which they've done back and forth with the Muslims forever.
Mm-hmm.
So they really do embody this. Like if you want to know what it was like to live in the Old Testament, if you just go to Ethiopia today, it's the same. There's people that claim to be kings. They're all vying for power. Different tribes. I think there's 70 tribes in Ethiopia-ish. That are all like, a lot of them are Christian, but they still have tribal conflict. Some of them are Muslim, so there's tribal conflict plus religious conflict. They're back and forth there. I think they're in a civil war right now. There's like the Ark of the Covenant's there. They're fighting about it. It's like they're observing Levitical laws, but also it's crazy, right? It's like this insane mashup of a place. So it's a very intense place on top of being, like, there are very nice people,
Mm-hmm.
but like there are lines in the sand, which if you cross them, there's no like moral qualm in their heads about like, well, and now it's time to shoot people.
Yeah.
Like people in the West get very like, well, is this moral or whatever? And they're like, everything's great. Okay. But now bang, bang, bang.
Mm-hmm.
And then back to normal.
Yep.
And it never registers that never is like a hiccup in their heads. It's just like, well, that's what you do. So I think maybe that could be. So it's also a place that is extremely into the miraculous.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you think Catholics are weird for believing in Fatima, they go every rock and corner has a saint attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
with some crazy story. And they all pretty much believe them. Like there's this monastery there up on a hill, on a mountain. You have to climb up with a rope.
Okay.
It's so steep. And they say that the founder was climbing up there, that God had told him to start a monastery up there. So he's climbing up there. He falls, and he's going to fall to his death, but a 30-foot snake juts out of the crevices of the rock, grabs him by the heels, and lifts him back up. So it's like that sort of thing all over the place.
Awesome.
Right? And so I'm going to just give you to give all of the black people a taste of the real We Was Kings,
Mm-hmm.
which is the Ethiopians, which never been conquered, never been colonized, probably maybe have the real Ark of the Covenant, have had an empire for 2,000 years.
Descendants of Solomon.
By some estimates,
Yeah.
going back 3,000 years. Right? Have been really quite an interesting people on the world stage. Preserved the Book of Enoch and other ancient texts. All of these things the Ethiopians have done. I think the black people, if they're gonna We Was Kings, Egypt is not where it is.
Yeah.
Egypt's not where it is, because Egypt, there was periods where the ruling class of Egypt was black, but it was not the majority of the time, and it was probably not the time when the pyramids were built. Of course, I think the pyramids were built like way longer ago than
As do I.
they think.
Yeah.
But Ethiopia, though, you can claim that all day long.
Yeah.
And it's very cool. It's a very interesting place. I think we have a lot to learn from Ethiopia. And that is a real history that the black people can get onto, that it would be beneficial. Like, rather than like believing that their history is gangster rap, which is what the culture wants them to believe.
Right.
So I'm going to tell you about when the Italians, and this I was reading this book called The Unknown Empire: The True Story of the Mysterious Ethiopia by Dean W. Arnold. And this book talks about all of these things about Ethiopia and how they are maybe the future of civilization or Christianity writ large, because every other modern place in the world has a below replacement birth rate. Ethiopia is a historic Christian nation with a birth rate of at least 4.3.
Awesome. Good job, guys.
So they are, just by numbers, probably going to be more important in the future than a lot of places. In fact, it's strange that no one really knows about them in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. This is what I mean. They're always there and sort of a big deal, but no one really notices. Like, everyone's heard of the Coptics, right? And they sort of know about them. But there are 10 times as many Ethiopian Orthodox people globally as there are Coptics.
No kidding.
Right? And it's like, and like I said, they had this huge empire, and the Ethiopians, which is why they're sort of based, if you ask them why, every time they go, it's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
And not just like the people on the ground, like the people in their universities, like, oh yes, documented conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And it sort of fits that the Ark of the Covenant would get there, though, because in the ancient cosmology, Ethiopia is the fringe of the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because again, it's the center, and then like the North Pole-ish, and then at the edges is where everything that is extreme would accumulate.
Okay.
And so it sort of makes narrative sense that it would occur there. And they're also, they're supremely confident, you know? Like, people will be like, if you go there, I've heard this from two separate people when they're talking about things. One guy was like, you know, we have the Ark of the Covenant, and this American scholar was there, and he's like, yeah, but what proof do you have of that? Can you prove it? And the Ethiopian guy looks at him and he goes, we don't need proof. It's a fact. We don't, like, what do you, he just rejects outright this idea that like they have to verify it to other people. And then there's another tradition, like one of these monasteries, they hold that during the flight to Egypt, when Jesus, Mary, and Joseph ran away, that they spent time going up and down the Nile for a bit and actually came to Ethiopia. There's a monastery there. And there's like a place marked. It's like, this is where Mary held baby Jesus in her lap on this exact stone. And people be like, that's a pretty incredible claim. Can you prove that? I'm like, we don't need proof. It's a fact. They said that several times.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, this is what people have said for 3,000 years, and this is what we say now.
So they have a very high regard for oral tradition, historical tradition and stuff.
Oh yeah. It's like it's not even like, it's just like unquestionable.
Right.
It's not even like the West doubts its stories all the time.
Yeah, that's all we do. Yeah.
It's all we do. But they're more like if you were in 800 AD Germany, and they were just like, oh yeah, well the folklore was this, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
Right? And it's the same. So it really is. It's a fascinating way to sort of step back in time. If you were to go hang out in Ethiopia and just sort of see how they view the world.
It must be nice to have. It must be nice to have a historical worldview that hasn't been blown to smithereens by postmodernism.
Yeah, and like I said, they've survived that totally. Now, the author of this book talks about how there's a constant attack. So the Ethiopians have there's civil war now. They've got the Muslim problem there. Now, actually, though this has not always been observed by the Muslims, they have gone against this from time to time. Another interesting thing about Ethiopia is that Muhammad prohibited jihad against Ethiopia.
Really?
Because the Ethiopians helped them. The Ethiopians Christians showed them mercy at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, there shall be no jihad on Ethiopia. And so that has kept a lot of peace between them, although at times the Muslims have not regarded that.
Mm-hmm.
And, as you do.
Yeah.
But so there have been a lot of, nonetheless, there's been a lot of peace there where there may not otherwise have been.
Sure, yeah.
So, I forget where I was going with that. But, yeah, so they just take things as fact. Like their worldview hasn't been blown to smithereens by modernism. And somehow they have survived. So this is where I was going with that. All of the things, like this is how you sort of think like there's a miraculous intervention here because, okay, all of the attacks of modernism, living side by side with Islam, constant tribal warfare, the entire colonization of Africa, over and over again, all of these existential threats have come upon Ethiopia, and it has somehow survived them all. Right? In a really insane way. So the story of this book starts out with an Ethiopian Olympian named Abebe Bikila.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in 1960. He was 28 years old. And he ran and won the Olympic gold medal. He was the first black African to win an Olympic medal in the modern Olympics.
Okay.
Before then, people had this idea that black people were not athletic. Which is a weird concept. This is why it was one of those things where people are like, oh, this group is athletic and this group isn't. Uh-huh. That changes so much through the years. Like who today is viewed as less athletic than maybe the Jews?
Yeah.
But in the early 1900s, the Jewish athlete was seen as the pinnacle of boxing.
Funny.
I know. It's all stupid. It's just this weird. And so for a while, it's like black people are not good athletes. Now, like, no, they're great athletes, and they're back and forth. And what I want to avoid on this show, and what I want to help people get over, is that for a long time, white people didn't hold black people in high regard. But then, now they do the opposite, and they sort of like think of them as magical.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're capable of they can't do wrong. It's like neither of those is good. Just they're normal people.
Yeah.
You don't have to be weird. Just it's like, oh yeah, there's another people. You don't have to. That's what I hope to teach people. Is you don't have to think of them as bad or magical, but just like normal people that are there, right? So Abebe Bikila won the 1960 and 1964 marathons. Like I said, the first black African to do so, and he won them running barefoot.
What?
He arguably started the barefoot running trend, which continues to this day, although most people can't do it.
I think you have to
Because it
start
takes a
that
lot
as a
of-
child if you're going to do that. You
Right.
can't just switch.
Right. I agree. And so Ethiopia has always been a sort of poor country. And so Abebe grew up running between farms, like delivering messages between people, barefoot across Ethiopia his whole life. Just back and forth. He said, we grew up running everywhere. And he said, 25 miles is nothing to me. I would run that when I was 10.
Wow.
Barefoot across Africa, just to go into like my mother would be like, go tell Aunt Susie, or whatever the Ethiopian equivalent is of Susie, that I need her to come over on Saturday. He would run over there, hey, and then he'd run back, and he'd run like 50 miles in a day.
Crazy.
Barefoot across the African wilderness, basically. Right? So this insane, this sort of insane lifestyle that they have. And that's true. I mean, a lot of people in Ethiopia today, even though they have cities and their stuff, some of them still live in like mud huts.
Yeah.
And run around barefoot, and they are farmers. Almost all of them are like subsistence farmers. It doesn't mean they're starving.
Yeah.
You
can do pretty well.
But they're not.
The soil out there is great in many places. I mean, it's really a great place to be a farmer.
Which is one of the reasons Italy wanted it. Italy in the 1890s tried to come over there with a huge army and take it, and it didn't work out. But one of the reasons was the Italians saw all this great fertile farmland. And they said, we could really modernize that farmland and produce like a bunch of stuff. These people are just like grazing sheep on it and growing stuff in the old-fashioned way. Mm-hmm. And they were like, because Ethiopia is one of the highest populations of farmers in the world. Almost everyone there is a farmer of some kind. Which may be why, and they don't have a lot of money, but this may be why they have such a high birth rate, because increased money, not living off the land, corresponds with a drop in birth rate every time.
Yeah.
Another reason that the Italians wanted to come there is because there was too many Italians. This is sort of crazy to think of now, but in the 1890s, the birth rate in Italy was 7.
Wow.
Which is huge.
Wow.
Like on average.
Yeah.
And so there were just so many Italians. That's why they all, unfortunately, came to New York City in America and just ruined it. Because now New York City is just a giant argument about who has the best pizza.
Yeah.
Which is the fault of the Italians. But that's because they had too many Italians to live in. And so they were like, well, we could go to Italy, or we could go to Ethiopia, and we could also have a colony. And they were like, because they were like the only European country that didn't,
Mm-hmm.
And France had some, and the UK had some, and everyone was like, yeah, to be cool, you need to be in the colonization club. And so they wanted to try. But it didn't work. And the Ethiopians defended their country on Christian grounds. For instance, Emperor Yonas, which is a way of saying like John.
Okay.
Emperor Yonas IV gave a clear response to the Italians who first demanded they hand over their country for colonial purposes. Quote, he wrote back this in a letter. How could I ever agree to sign away the lands over which my local ancestors governed? Christ gave them to me. So his thing was like, I have the divine right by Jesus to rule this place. Right? And so the Italians came in huge numbers and like set up, but it's a crazy story, and anyone that has this idea that Africans are low IQ, they basically outfoxed the Italians back and front.
Awesome.
The whole way. Right? So all of this stuff that people go around, it's like none of it's true. Mm-hmm. And if you actually just know about history, then it makes a lot of these misconceptions go away. In fact, some people have claimed, officially Ethiopia claims itself as to be the land of God, or a land of God. And the Ethiopian church adds this statement to their thing: Ethiopia will survive until the end of the world.
Yeah.
If you look on their websites and stuff, they're like, Ethiopia is a land of God and will survive to the end of the world. Sila.
That is awesome.
Right.
Man, I love this place now.
I know. In fact, Ethiopia is probably the source of the Prester John legends in medieval Europe. Like this faraway Christian kingdom that no one's quite sure where it is. Probably what they were talking about. So anyway, Abebe Bilka is sort of the first of the modern day introductions into what Ethiopia is. Before then, people weren't really like, other than the Italian War, no one really knew where, like, the Western exposure to Ethiopians, other than that, was very minimal, except for until Abebe came around.
Gotcha.
Now, the Ethiopians claim that they are descendants specifically of the Israeli tribes of Levi, Judah, and Dan.
Okay.
And in fact, Dan may mean dark. That tribe.
Interesting.
In Israel may mean black. It's a little debated.
All right.
But there may have actually been one of the 12 tribes may have been black people. So there you go, Hebrew Israelites.
It's all coming together.
You don't have, we're putting everyone at peace here. You don't have to dress up like Sunday school characters anymore. In a pageant. You can just be a normal guy. Yeah. Because there's some truth to the fact that there were some black Jews. So, like I said, they consider themselves part of the order of Melchizedek. Each and every monastery in Ethiopia claims that it is part of the Melchizedekian Enochian tradition. And so, so basically the story with Italy attacking them was in the 1860s. There was a bit of a dust up. The colonialization was happening. And the Emperor Theodoros, I can never pronounce this name correctly, was given the gift of a pistol from Queen Victoria. To try, she just sent him a pistol. Yeah. It's like a fancy ornate pistol. Now, no one knew at the time that pistol would be how he would die.
Ooh.
Right? Like most Ethiopians, Theodoros attended a church school and learned the basics of education and also a lot of Bible. He was sent to a convent at Lake Tana for more training in the ancient and modern European history, literature, and even some Shakespeare. And along with the pistol, Victoria sent him a royal letter upon his inauguration as Emperor of Ethiopia. And Theodoros' return letter was never answered. And after a while, he began to suspect that it wasn't answered on purpose, and that there was some shady dealings going around. He decided, because he had hoped that he could ally with this allegedly also Christian empire, Britain, to help him beat back the Muslims in Africa, which were rapidly gaining all over the place. He was to learn, though, that Europeans were more interested in their own things than they were in their religion. This is sort of a naivete that the Ethiopians have run into several times, is that they think other people are as religious as they are. And so they would think like, let's team up as fellow Christians and like advance Christianity. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, sure, we'll do that. And they get backstabbed like every time. Which is not great. But Victoria, he slowly learned that Victoria was not simply ignoring him, but that Christian advancement had to be weighed and often was outweighed by the priorities of the empire. Right. Like the Suez Canal had recently opened on the Red Sea on Ethiopia's northern border. But Egypt had built a port in the Ethiopian territory at Massawa. And France, Britain's greatest rival, had built a port near Wasawa at Djibouti. So Britain needed to access those waters without depending on France and could not afford to upset Muslim powers. And so she's playing footsie with the Muslims at the same time.
Right.
And he's like, "What are you doing this for? I thought we were both Christians." And they run into this several times, not realizing that other people don't take their religion as seriously as they do. This is a recurring theme.
Know that feel.
Yeah. So, Teodoro sends a man named Cameron to hand deliver a letter to Victoria, which failed to happen. And so then he had allowed the British to send some missionaries there, which he felt was redundant, but he was like, whatever. And he was hoping that he would get some weapons and some like stuff from the English, but that didn't happen. So he tried to make the missionaries then make weapons, and they didn't know how. Right. So there was this brewing conflict. He wasn't able to get any help. The European powers were playing the Muslims against him, and they were also playing the other Ethiopian tribes against him. And when he became emperor, though, one of the princes of a king who he had killed in his expansion over Ethiopia as emperor, he took in and made his son in a very Saul David thing.
Okay.
In a very similar thing. The boy's name was Menelik, which means son of the king, and he would later refer to himself as the King of Kings. He wrote to Victoria as an adult. It just shows you his ambition. He's like down there in the middle of nowhere, Ethiopia, and he's like, "I am the King of Kings," writing to Queen Victoria, who has the largest empire in the world. But anyway, both Menelik and Teodoros claim to be from descendants of Solomon. The current leader, by the way, as an aside, is Zara Yaqub Amaselisi, who has been head of the Imperial House of Ethiopia since February 17th, 1997. Also claims to be. So they still do this. I think he was by the 200. I think he's said to be by the Ethiopian Constitution the 223rd son of King Solomon.
Awesome.
So it's like written in the Ethiopian Constitution.
Cool.
Like, and he is the 223rd of the. So anyway, to sort of sum up a lot of this thing with this Teodoros guy, the European powers are trying to get in there. Everyone's sort of agreed that Italy can have Ethiopia. They play off a bunch of people against him, and Teodoros eventually falls to infighting from basically the Italians playing other tribes off against him. Now, this, despite the fact that Teodoros had made great concessions as a progressive king to the democratic world, not democratic then, but progressive, in that he has said, "Listen, I will no longer do castration as a military tactic." And that's, in the olden days, that's all it took to be a progressive. Now it's so hard. Now we're back around to you should castrate people. Because transgender. Right? But back then, it was much easier. It's like, just don't castrate anybody and you're progressive. It's like, "Yeah, great. I can do that." Despite this progressive leaning, it didn't... Behind his back, Italy was still ginning up a bunch of problems. And so he was dethroned, and Menelik, who could not, the guy he'd raised as his son, despite the fact that he had killed his father, could not bring himself to betray Teodoros, and so was not granted by the Italian people that were doing all these psyops against him the chance to become the new ruler in his place. But rather they picked another guy, an Egyptian Sudanese fellow, to sort of be the de facto emperor of Ethiopia. And Menelik had to do the do the sort of ancient. There was this Ethiopian rite of like submission of one king to the emperor, where you strip shirtless, naked from the waist up, and you march to the emperor with a big stone on your back.
Okay.
This is what I mean. Like, it's very Old Testament. Like, this is sort of stuff that's going on like recently. Yeah. Like, they carry this stone on their back, and then they bow in submission to the other one, or whatever. And so he has to do all this. And so for a time, it looks, again, as though the Italians are going to just take over and colonize Ethiopia. But Menelik, this whole time, he is going back and forth with the other European powers, and he's acquiring weapons behind their back. And he is making it look like he only has about 20,000 men total. Now, really, secretly, as the Italians are coming in with about 30,000, 40,000 troops building fortifications, Menelik has secretly, even fooling his wife into thinking he's not doing anything. His wife, the queen, was very mad at him for like sitting back and not doing anything while the Italians were steamrolling in. Secretly, Menelik has forged alliances with almost everyone in Ethiopia and with the Muslims in Ethiopia. He would go there and throw these gigantic parties with the Muslims. And people did that for years, and people thought he was being unchristian, and he was not like keeping the faith, and that he was fraternizing with the pagans, and that he was cowardly and wouldn't do anything. But he spent about 20 years quietly building up a huge reserve of weapons that no one noticed, keeping them hidden, and building up alliances with almost everybody without anyone else realizing he had alliance with other people. And so then one day, the Italians have an outpost, and a representative of Menelik shows up with a small force. And he sent about 5,000 people ahead of him, so that would look like the whole of it. And the Italians say, he says, look, I hate to have to do this. Again, they do everything in Christian terms. But the representative from Menelik says, listen, I do not want to spill the blood of fellow Christians, but I will be forced to if you do not leave Ethiopia immediately. And the general from Italy says, well, my king, because it was still a kingdom at the time, has put me here. I can't, even if I wanted to. So we're just going to have to go. I hope your army's good. My army's very good. And so then they commenced a little bit of fighting. Unbeknownst to them, though, the rest of the army has gone around and poisoned the spring that feeds the water into this fort.
Yeah.
Right. So after a while, they start getting sick. They can no longer do anything, and they have to vacate. And this fortress was really like the center point of the Italian military operations in the area, in the highlands of Ethiopia. And without it, they didn't have a good strategic position. So they come forward almost immediately with the rest of their troops out of Eritrea up into Ethiopia proper. And they just have a big fight. And the Italians vastly underestimated the number of people that that Menelik was able to marshal. In fact, by a factor of 10, they were off. Like, their intelligence said that he had like 100,000. He was on close to a million.
Wow.
And they had a big fight, and Menelik had gathered weapons, not enough for everybody. And a lot of the Ethiopians were barefoot and using like a lance.
Sweet.
They did have guns, and they did have artillery, but not enough for everybody. But they had a big fight, and the barefoot Ethiopians kicked the Italians out. Yeah. In what was maybe the greatest embarrassment in Europe at the time, because all the other European powers going, can't even have a colony, ha ha. And they were really upset about it. Now, to be fair to the Italians, this was more of the demonic progressive thing, because the Italians back home, because the media told them this, largely were under the impression that Italy was there civilizing the Ethiopians. And being nice to them.
They were spreading freedom and democracy.
Exactly. They were bringing freedom. 100% is the same story. It was the same. And then when they saw that, wait a minute, they're actually civilized enough to fight us off. They have like organization. They're like, what is any of that? Are you guys? And this is largely, no joke, sort of why Mussolini came to power. Because in the breakdown of the authority of and trust in the media led to the rise of fascism and Mussolini, because like no one believed the old people anymore.
Right.
Because they told them this whole story about what they were doing in Ethiopia and why, and they said Ethiopia is like this land of blood and guts and like savagery, and they don't have any organization at all, and we got to help feed them and stuff. And yes, that means we have to impose that with the military, but only because there's like terrorists there and stuff, right? Not because of the Ethiopia, not because we're mean to the Ethiopia. And so they were telling the Italians all this, and it turned out that wasn't true at all. And so really this battle, you could maybe point to this as the whole start of like, if this hadn't happened, it's arguable that Mussolini and fascism would have never taken off in Italy, and Hitler wouldn't have had an ally in Europe.
Let's take an aside here and just acknowledge that there are so many similarities in this story to the setup of what's going on in Ukraine right now.
Oh, I know. It's the same
at the religious level, at the strategic level, at the geopolitical level. These stories are just so similar. At least as far as it's gone so far with Ukraine.
Yeah, and like and this is the thing people have to understand about colonization too. If you read history books, and like the books at the time, and the books that were like textbooks in schools, if you get some of those and you read them, like, colonization is presented to the man on the street in these countries as, we are going there basically to give them freedom and democracy. Yeah. Same thing, but it was slightly different. It was like, we're going there to give them civilization, teach them how to grow food properly, give them the Industrial Revolution, right? And that wasn't really the objective. Yeah. The objective was to take the land and like for the resources. But just like it was in Afghanistan. But it's sold, but the people are only at fault for believing, which this is a fault, for believing what the media says to them. And like, because it's never true. Like, it's always framed in this good way. But like, the people of Europe were not bad. They just believed a totally false thing about what was going on in Africa that was told to them. And a lot of people tried to raise the alarm, and a lot of people, they were shouted down and said, you're a conspiracy theorist. They didn't use that term, but it was like, this guy's, he doesn't know anything. He's a disgraced academic. You know, every time. That's how they've always done it. That's how they do it today. But this upset, Mussolini was 13 at the time, living in Italy, and he was enraged at this. And he thought, this has made us look like it's made us look like big dopes. We're the only European country that couldn't succeed doing this. We got defeated humiliatingly. And that's why one of the first things Mussolini did was try to go back to Ethiopia. Like, it was just strictly a vengeance thing. He got in a little farther, but ultimately he also was not able to take control of the highlands of Ethiopia and was pushed out again. So, is that because the Ethiopians have the Ark of the Covenant that helps them in battle? Maybe. I don't know. Right? But it does seem to be a somewhat divinely protected land for reasons that are known only to God. I don't know. But it's difficult to imagine how they've survived so much over time, like, and still retained an identity as Ethiopia. Yeah. Like, going back to basically Old Testament Bible times. Like, there's Ethiopians like the time of Abraham. right? And they're still there, and they're still basically the same. They were Jews, and now they're Christians. And there's a line of continuity from like maybe Melchizedek to the current bishop of Ethiopia.
Not many lands can really.
Insane.
I don't know that any other land can claim that sort of continuity on that many dimensions.
You can't, and no one even knows about it, right? Like no one even is like this crazy like. That's what I mean. Like they don't actually teach people about Black history during Black History Month. Only this show does that, because what they want you to believe is that there was a guy named George Washington Carver who made peanut butter, and that's the extent of it.
Always the Carver guy, right? I mean, he was cool and all, but
he didn't even make
Ethiopia
peanut butter.
is way cooler,
right? Like the Aztecs had peanut butter. He made a new way of manufacturing peanut butter.
I can tell you exactly why Ethiopia is never talked about during Black History Month in America is because Ethiopia is Christian.
Exactly. It's 100% what it is. And right now, like Bill Gates is trying to target them with his population control methods. They've been trying to introduce birth control there and all of the things that they do to lower their population. Like the agents of Satan have been attacking them so hard. Ethiopia is still very old school though. Adultery is illegal. Homosexuality is illegal. Abortion's illegal. All these things are like,
oh man,
it's
awesome.
I know it's
keeps getting better.
It's in some ways a very inspirational place, and in some ways they need to send missionaries to us.
Yeah, dude,
because they have a lot of things figured out. But this is like this is a thing. Like they want Black Americans to think that the extent of their history is people related to slavery, Frederick Douglass, George Washington Carver, and rap music.
It's not a great history story.
And that's not even, because they don't want to, like the Black people that are conspiracy theorists are correct in that they don't want them to know about actual Black history.
Yeah.
Because actual Black history is actually has a crazy Christian background to it, going back thousands of years, and is still a very living tradition today that would be very threatening to the powers that be if people latched onto it.
Yeah.
You know. So this is actual Black history, and
all the Hoteps need to convert to Ethiopian Orthodoxy.
It would be an improvement.
Yeah.
Because the Hoteps, while they say some interesting things, a lot of them have devolved into like the Black Manosphere.
Yeah.
Which is not a great development. No. Because they're just talking about like sexual relations.
Yeah.
And it's like
they're in a Jack Murphy spiral.
They're in a Jack Murphy spiral. That's true. So this would be an improvement. If they all were, you know, they even pioneered barefoot running, which is great. I mean, that is actually better for your posture, and like your knees don't. People that jog, they always complain about their knees. It's like, well, that's because you have shoes on. It really is.
Well, you can't go back now is the problem.
I don't know. I think maybe you could if you really tried. Like if you really dedicated yourself to like learning to walk barefoot.
Yeah.
But you'd have to really spend time doing it.
It would be a major life adjustment.
Major life adjustment to doing that.
And I don't think the concrete environment that we live in is very conducive to that either. I mean,
it's not.
You know,
but Abebe did run on streets with barefoot though.
Yeah. Okay. I guess if you grew up doing it.
Speaking of barefoot, every Ethiopian Orthodox service in the world, if you go to the liturgy, you have to remove your shoes and be barefoot.
Awesome.
Because where you stand is holy ground.
Yeah.
So you take off your shoes and you go in. And that's true even of the ones in America. There are Ethiopian Orthodox, not very many, but there are churches here in America you can go to, and they'll ask you to remove your shoes.
I appreciate the reverence there.
Yeah. I mean, it's like if you want to see how people used to be religious and how like go to Ethiopia today. That sort of behavior is very, very much still alive, including all of the tribal conflicts that come along with that sort of lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so one could say like, well, is the trade-off good because we don't have to worry about civil war breaking out all the time, although maybe now with maybe in the future.
Well, I think one of the lessons is if you really believe things, if you really take your belief seriously, somebody is going to declare war on you.
That's true. Yeah, you avoid war by not believing anything.
Yeah,
with any fervor.
Yeah,
that's true.
That's the piece. The piece of modernity is because nobody believes anything.
Yes,
not worth it, guys.
Succinct.
You've traded the truth for peace, and you get neither.
Yeah. So yeah. So there's real Black history. I will maybe next time I will tell you about the fascinating history of Somalia.
Sweet.
But who knows?
Fun show. I'm going to celebrate Black history in a new way.
I'm here saving Black people. I am the Black savior. That's true. I don't think that it's too much to say that. I'm saving Black Americans from Dr. Dre.
Now, see, you've just blown the whole show with that one comment.
Well, I like to make a good show and then ruin it.
I know you do.
I'm like those, the monks that make the thing of sand.
Yeah.
And they brush it all away.
They brush it all away, yeah.
That's the same principle.
Mm.
Targets up here, we just had something go right over the top of us that, I hate to say this, looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast that went right over the top of us.